Okay. Okay. All right. Now we're live. Hey,
Okay.
David, thank you
Hello.
again for asking me to do the reading. And you're also going to be here to share some information, new information about your book and all kinds of stuff that you've been learning more about yourself and all that. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your book and all that we've been talking about being an empath and everything too. So you have the floor.
Great. Thanks, Christy. I
Mhm.
want to give a shout out first to James Rink. Happy
Yeah.
birthday tomorrow, James.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday, James.
All right. The title of my book is going to be No Beginning and No Ending, Just Now. I've been reading a lot in a man that makes a lot of sense to me about where all of us are when we're bringing out these memories of whether they're alters or our higher self or just past life memories. His name is Jacobo Grinberg. He is a Mexican who has disappeared, I believe, around 1999. But he sees the universe in the quantum as a lattice, and we are all connected to that lattice. And if you think of a lattice as a iceberg lettuce, you start peeling off the outer leaves, and each leaf is a level within that lattice. So this book is going to be my start of a self autobiography. And it started with a reading I had from Aaron Lynn Johnson. And Aaron had my consciousness becoming aware 894 million years ago. So she also had me as working under a archangel called Shemel. And when she said Shemel, I thought she was talking about Samuel, the biblical character. And I
Hmm.
had to look it up, and it's spelled a little bit different, Chamuel. And Shemel is supposed to be the archangel of love and war. And so apparently I was a real slow student, and I had to spend 20 lifetimes under Archangel Shemel. And when I left Archangel Shemel, I was assigned to the third order beneath Archangel Michael. And in the third order, my task was, with others that were in that order, is to find lost souls and bring them to their guardian angels to help them go home. So it was a very interesting reading. She's very uh, extensive in her research of the Akashic, but I've also had readings that were with Ivan Teller, and Ivan had me as a IT tech or a quality assurance individual representing a company that made a drive system for a Zeta craft.
Hmm.
And we came into the German airspace just prior to the breakout of World War II. And I'm guessing 1937. And we were taken out by the um, Palladian group that were the Nordics. And I had no idea why, but apparently, maybe the Zetas were going to give some technology to the Germans, and the Nordics might have thought it was too advanced. So they disabled the craft and it crashed. I was the sole survivor for about 6 hours, Ivan said, and they couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again, but they took his body, me, and the ship to Area 51. And that's about where that story ended. But I asked Ivan, I said, I always thought that I'd been an ET, and during World War II, I was looking for parents. And my dad was a B 24 bomber pilot, and my mother was a stateside Army air nurse. And so I was the second child born into that family. And other readings that I had, Oksana Buchanan, I think some of you may know Oksana, and she had me in the Nachtwaffen. And the way I was brought into her vision of myself in the Nachtwaffen was I was a Polish helicopter pilot down around Yugoslavia and Montenegro, and I was transporting big steel tubes from that area, the factories, to Germany. And one day I was out on the beach and I stepped on a landmine and boop, up I went. And so that's what Oksana saw. And she saw a alien crew working on me. One of the medicals was a big mantis. And after they repaired the body and I recovered, she saw me in a officer's type of a uniform, and I had a symbol on my uniform over my heart, and I could tap it, and it would allow me to bilocate. Okay, so I mean, this is not my memory, but this is something that was, given to me. And then I met James Rink. I've not had any readings by James, but I got very interested in his super soldier talk and loved to listen to everybody talking. And I believe the first person I met there was David Lotherington.
London.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And yeah, David had me as a Nazi in a Nazi uniform during World War II. But I asked Ivan during that reading, I said, well, Ivan, if I came out of body as an ET, and did I go into every theater of that war as a walk-in type of person so I could observe and record in memory what was going on with the violent nature of the human on this planet? And he thought, yes, that he saw me in that. So was I a Nachtwaffen, or was I a imposter infiltrating in the guise of a human? Because I revert back to what Aaron Lynn told me, is that my origin planet is from the Zavians, which is in the Virgo constellation, but it's a dark planet and very aquatic. We're almost like water beings that do not have a very defined physical outline to our form. But we've been taken through a level of enlightenment, and we can then take on most alien forms that we choose. So I'm writing that aspect into my book, and it goes further in that there's two Kimberlys that I have had readings from. Kimberly Lusana, and she said, well, David, since you was in the Air Force, I know they had to have taken you, and the other Kimberly is Dr. McGeorge, Kimberly McGeorge. And Kimberly McGeorge really gave me an overall purview of Monarch, Shoreham, uh, let's see, the the what you call it, that the defense program around Mars,
Mars Defense Program.
the pilot and navigator.
Mm-hmm.
She said, now you're in the mid-level management,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm associated with all the alphabet groups,
Mm-hmm.
CIA, NSA, the Chinese intelligence group, the
On
Russian
Mars. Mm-hmm.
intelligence group, the British MI6. She said, you're mixing with them all.
Mm.
And she said that there probably are clones
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
you have.
Right.
So, um,
Do you know how the clones are made? Do you know, can you explain how the clones will be made?
well, they say that they're going to split your consciousness and insert consciousness into a, I'll call it an NPR, or was it NPC, a non-personal character, that a soulless type character. And um, I've read a lot about how people describe the clones, that they are they are attached to your memories, and they can be influencing you through an altered ego at those times. Um, but I I leave it open.
Yeah,
I
so it's like if you have, you talk about being on Mars, then it's, so that would be like you was in
Yeah,
the SSP, so you would have been taken when you were a little a little kid. And
McGeorge, Dr.
mhm.
McGeorge, she said that, oh, you were a Martian. You
Oh,
were
okay.
you were a slave on Mars,
Hmm.
and you worked yourself up to be like a trustee, and then you were very well respected and liked, and that's how you got drafted into like the Nachtwaffen, okay? And so you knew uh, how to navigate a ship around Mars and the asteroid belt, okay,
Mm. Mm.
and that type of
Yeah.
thing. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So and she said, "Oh, the Martians love you, and they'd love to have you back."
Oh, okay. So the
Okay,
Martian. What do you remember what that? Do you remember what they would have looked like or anything with that at all?
I do not. That that
Mm-hmm.
that is the mystery. Why am
Mm-hmm.
I so blocked with?
Mm-hmm.
Though I've had such experiences here in this now that are supernatural type of experiences, uh, altered states of consciousness, which just came on. All right. Um, one one incident in Key West, Florida, that I had gone to this bar at the Ramada Inn. I was driving a new motorcycle. It was a Honda 750 Super Sport, and I bought it from another veterinary technician in the Air Force that had been assigned to the Naval Air Station at Key West. And so that night, I went on the bike to the Ramada and just to check out the scene. Like I had only $3 in my pocket. So,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't out, I was married and I wasn't out looking for a prostitute or to get drunk, but
Mm-hmm.
I was challenging. Women's liberation was on big time. Like this was 1979. And there was a young lady in the entryway, and she was from Chicago, I found out, but I says, "Hey, darling, could you buy me a drink?" And she, "No way, you know." And I said, "Well, why are you here?" She said, "Oh, I run a tourist agency back in Chicago, and so I'm just looking at Key West so I can sell it to people." I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Okay." Later on, I went downstairs to a country western music bar, And the tax collector from the city of Tampa, Florida was down there. But the man looked just like Dennis Weaver. Uh, you know, Chester from Gunsmoke, that
Mm-hmm.
actor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a party of maybe 6 people with him from probably his office, the city government of Tampa. And they were giving out free beers, and I had me about 3 of them before I moved on.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to another bar in the lower level, and there was a young Cuban prostitute trying to put the make on me. And I'm going, Carlin, I could barely afford this 7 Up I'm buying,
Mm-hmm.
let
Yeah.
alone, being a customer of yours. And so it got to be late, like 1:30 in the morning, and I went upstairs to go back to my barracks room out at Boca Chica uh, Naval Air Station, but my motorcycle wouldn't start. So I walked back into the hotel and to go to the front desk, and I said, "What are the chances that I could grab a chair and sleep in the janitor's closet until morning?" And the night manager, the female that was on duty that night, she says, "No way." I said, "Well, lady, I called Shore Patrol. My motorcycle won't start. They won't come out and get me because it's not an emergency. So, really?" She said, "No, can't let you do that." Okay. I go back downstairs. I go to the bar back that's cleaning up the bar in the basement level. And I said, "Hey, this is my story. I'm sticking to it. And what can I do?" He said, "Well, there's 2 rattan chairs sitting on top of conference tables out in the veranda. It's an outside area between 2 wings of that hotel. And there's a gazebo just towards the ocean side." So I said, "All right." And now I had just completed about 7 solid months of 4 nights a week at the International College of Hypnosis Studies in Miami, Florida, on the
Mm-hmm.
GI Bill to learn hypnosis, to learn, first off, how to relax. I wanted to know how my mind works. Are we suggestible or not? Do we take these suggestions and do we act on them? Do we have to accept them? All that kind of stuff. So I get up and I was going to get up in the chair, and this young woman comes walking out of one wing and she's going to the other wing, and I'm about checking out. I said, "Lady, you wouldn't let a stranger sleep on your floor tonight in your room, would you?" "Oh, no, I can't do that," she said. And you get that gut feeling like you really screwed up. You put your foot into it, they're going to come and find you. And so I said, "Well, I don't have too much of a choice." I got up in those chairs, leaned back. I did my 20 minutes of progressive relaxation, and I finished it off with my version of the Lord's Prayer. And my version of the Lord's Prayer has I think, a key part where I admit that I'm more qualified to lead myself into temptation than any prime creator or God would lead me into temptation.
Mm-hmm.
But I sure could use your help, Lord, to deliver me from my temptation. And, so off I went. And maybe about 2 hours later, I'm hearing voices, and it sounds like a search party. Well, like we've looked here again, we've looked here before. And then I'm starting to stir internally, and I hear another voice. It said, "If you open your eyes to see them, they will see you." I kept my eyes
Mm-hmm.
closed, and I waited for sun to come up. And when it became dawn, I got up and I threw water in my face, and I got out to my motorcycle. I kicked it off the stand and I started pushing it down the road. So probably about almost a mile to go to the commissary for where the Navy had, and I was a food inspector for them. So I found a person that was up in his reading room with his light on. I mean, dawn was still breaking the horizon, so it was kind of, not really daylight. So I put the bike on the stand and I knocked on his door and I said, "Sir, here's my story. But got to go to work at the commissary. I'll come back, but can I leave the bike here? So he said yes. I go to work, and I was working in civilian clothes. That was not a problem. A 7-Eleven driver was delivering stuff to the commissary, and I noticed he had a tailgate on his tractor trailer that lifted. And I said, I said, hey, would you help me with my bike? It's down the road. I need to take it over to Sears and Roebuck and see if I need a new battery.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. So we go down the road. We put the bike in the back of his truck, go to Sears, I get a new battery, and it works. Well, that night, I go back to the hotel, and I'm going to go thank the bar back. Okay. And I'm just getting off the motorcycle, and who comes around the corner but that night manager? Where the hell were you last night? I said, excuse me. We looked all over for you and couldn't find you. Where were you? I said, ma'am, if you don't know, I don't know either.
Mm-hmm.
And
good answer. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I got on my motorcycle and I left Dodge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were looking for you.
Yeah. So when the TDY was over, I got to go back to Homestead Air Force Base, and I drove into Miami to talk to Dr. Shrout, who was the principal teacher. He was a PhD psychologist. And I also knew that he was an ex-Jesuit priest, missionary to Ecuador. And he married his female counterpart, that was an Ecuadorian woman, got out of the priesthood, finished his college education in Toronto and got his PhD in psychology and moved to Miami, Florida because his wife spoke Spanish better than she spoke English. And so I said, Doc, this is what happened to me in Key West this past week. What do you think? He said, David, I can only say you was protected from above. And I think, with his training in religion, that's about as far as he was going to be able to go out of his trained box, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so fast forward to Journey to Truth 2023, I won the lottery and got a reading from Abby Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
And so during that reading, I says, Abby, I told her that story I just told you all. And she said, oh, you zoomed out and zoomed in. I said, She said, yeah, and it's an automatic thing. You don't have any conscious control over it. And many people do that. And so I got a book I just bought from Amazon, and it's about strange disappearances. And it goes back into history, starting with Romulus, who was the founder of the Roman Empire. All right? And the old myth about him being raised by a she-wolf. And he and his brother Remus. But later on, Romulus was known to disappear and reappear miles from where he disappeared from. And he moved around quite frequently with that type of activity, and this was noted by Roman senators, and they would write it in their biographies. So somebody has really dug deep to translate that. And
how do you explain that to be like the zooming in and zooming out? Would you explain it?
I would explain it something secretive about my mission, and it's a protection device or a program, not a device, but a program of consciousness that is able to totally discombobulate the physicality into electromagnetic particles of electrons and neutrons and protons and and then move them and then either bring them back to this spot or reconstitute them at another spot.
Do
called
you
bio.
think that that's during like an adrenaline, kind of adrenaline movement, you know?
Yeah, there has to be an emotion,
Hmm.
probably of fear,
Hmm.
or fearfulness, but I don't think that you mentally lock up, all right, and freeze, so to speak. I think if you would freeze, then you're you're gonna be caught, uh,
Hmm.
where you are. There was
Yeah.
another interesting story in that book about people disappearing, and it was a Greek boxer, and this guy was huge. I mean,
Oh.
you've seen a show called Reacher, uh,
Mm-mm.
where the guy is just enormous, and he's got a great punch, right?
Hmm.
This guy, he broke the rules and he killed an opponent, in a boxing match, and so he becomes shunned by the people in his town. And later on, they started to want to kill him. And the only place that he could hide, that they couldn't really get into because of his strength, was a concrete casket.
Mm.
So he lifted the lid to the casket, he got in, and he stayed in there. And the people finally deduced that that's where he was. And they got hammers and they busted the casket open to find nothing.
Mm.
All right. So, even at that stage, he
It could,
bilocated
yeah.
completely,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So there are many stories before we get to the story of Jesus Christ and the resurrection and him coming back to the upper room, and your doubting Thomas story of, is this an apparition or is this real? And the story of doubting Thomas putting his hand on the nail wounds and the wound on the side of Christ. And then Christ leaves, and he comes back later in the story, where the disciples are out there fishing, and he he prepares a dinner on the seashore, broiling fish for them. But so people often think that this is the only true story about people having the ability to disappear and reappear. And but we knew that Enoch did this. We knew that, um, uh, Ezekiel also did this,
Mm.
and those characters are in the Bible. But there are other people that are preceded that timeline that were doing the same thing and can be found in history. So this this to me, in my searching, um, I was brought up Judeo-Christian religion, mostly Methodism, and when I got in the military, I could not equate God with war, and not the God that I was taught, that was full loving, right?
Hmm.
And later on, when I got married, I even could see the peril that I was putting a family into. I'd already been to Vietnam as a single man, but I got married when I came back, and then I took them to Spain, and I could see the danger I was putting the children in, that they could get. We're living off base, and my son happened to disappear for an afternoon with a little boy across the street. And
Mm.
so that boy's parents didn't know where their child was. My wife
Hmm.
didn't know where our child was.
Hmm.
And even the older daughter, who was in kindergarten or first grade, fell asleep on the bus and ended up in Cadiz, which is about 30 clicks away from Port of Santa Maria, where we were
Wow. Mm.
living. And
That's
so,
strange. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, it was strange. So I really, I got depressed And I got so depressed that I thought the only way that I was going to get rid of this pain was to kill myself.
Hmm.
So I went and talked to a doctor, and they ended up putting me in the hospital and ended up bringing me back to the States. And then they brought the family back. And after a couple months in the hospital at Malcolm Grove, they saw me fit for duty again and sent me to Homestead Air Force Base in Florida.
Mm.
And so, you know, I excelled there as a young sergeant, and I got my tech sergeant stripes there, and went to Okinawa. And in Okinawa, nothing really super fantastic happened except for one time. And I would always play cards at Torrey Station, and we had um, language technicians in the Army. It was Torrey Station was an Army site, and these guys were listening to all the Chinese and Russian chatter across the airwaves. And so I would play pinochle with them at night, and I got into a drama club with them there. But I got to know two guys fairly well from playing cards with. So we went to Camp Butler to golf, and I'm not a golfer. You better be captain's choice. The nearest ball closest to the pin is the one that you're going to play. But Kim was ready to take the shot at the ninth hole from where we were, tee off, and we were on a hill, and down the hill was a fence, and on the other side was a 3-story apartment building, and there was a young Okinawan woman hanging out her clothes. And so I knew Kim just broke up with his girlfriend. And I said, Kim, you're going to splice that ball when you hit it. It's going to go over the fence, bounce 3 times in a row, and it's going to bounce around that woman hanging her clothes.
Mm.
I shouted out that girl's name, his old girlfriend's name, right when he was teeing off, right?
Wow.
The ball went over the fence, bounced 3 times, and ended up. And internally, I said, "Oh crap!"
Hmm.
And he and the other guy was a security policeman, Army security policeman. They said, "Benson, you're going to walk back to Canada."
They said, "What is this witchery?"
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
realized that, well, all I did was make a suggestion,
Predict it. Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
hit the right button for that suggestion to go into his
Hmm.
autonomic nervous system, and it did what it needed to do to
Hmm.
carry it
Hmm.
out,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So it's amazing what the human body can be made to do
Hmm.
with with inputs
Yeah.
that are mental
Hmm.
type inputs. And that
Yeah.
was hypnosis. I mean, later on that year, I did use hypnosis. That drama club, we were doing an Agatha Christie novel called
Yeah.
Murder After Hours. And during that second, it was a 3-night production. During the third night, one of the young corporals that was my British patrolman, I was an inspector, British inspector, like Scotland Yard, right? And he came down with a flu.
Mm.
So it was very worrisome whether we could go on. Was he going to throw up, during the middle of this production? I
Hmm.
took him off to the band room in the rec center and started using progressive relaxation with him just to totally calm down and almost try to reverse the peristalsis, which is how our gastrointestinal system it flows from our mouth to our anus,
Wow.
right?
Yeah. Wow.
So if I could calm it and get it kind of to stop moving for an hour, let's get the show on the road, so to speak,
Hmm.
it worked.
Mm.
And so that might have been before the golfing incident. I'm not sure about the time overlaps. And so
Yeah.
those people got security clearances and they are not supposed to be hypnotized. All right. Because people think you can get classified
Oh,
information.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, very interesting.
So
Uh,
did he get sick or what happened with that? You know,
well,
with
no,
the
he his symptoms went away, and
mm-hmm.
the show went on,
Mm-hmm.
and so we finished the show, and I don't think the symptoms returned. I don't know. He
Okay.
never related that to me, but
So you wasn't supposed to be hypnotizing this guy that you were doing because he was under like
right.
the
And so
brain.
the
Mm-hmm.
director of the play, I told him about what I was going to do,
Mm-hmm.
and he looked at me and says, "I didn't hear that,"
Oh, okay.
you
Mm-hmm.
know. So um, that was, but going back to before I went there, while I was still at Homestead Air Force Base, I took some night school classes before the hypnosis training at Miami-Dade Junior in parapsychology, and just to learn, terms and
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
what
something of interest.
these empaths were relating.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself one day doing Saturday work at the commissary. We had a shipment of produce coming in from the DPSC depot in Tampa, and I was starting to see like light orbs
Mm-hmm.
over certain boxes. And every time I looked at the box that had that light orb, the produce was rotten.
Oh, okay.
I had
Mm.
to reject it.
Mm.
And so it was like, well, you're waking up.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, During that TDY at Key West, I met a group of listeners that were listening to Cuba, and just like the same group in Okinawa, but they were more Spanish speaking trained,
Mm-hmm.
interpreters. And we went out to the boat races, and from Key West to the Grand Turk Islands, it might be 5-6 miles, and they would take these cigar boats and they would run for time, out to the island and back. And whoever had the fastest time would win the race. They
Okay.
weren't really, they weren't like a horse race where everybody was at the starting block together and on they went on the same
Mm-hmm.
track.
Yeah.
But while we were watching the boats go, I'm seeing smoke come out of the water. And I'm going, uh-oh, uh,
Smoke. Mm-hmm.
what in the world is going on here? I'm seeing literally like oil burning smoke, black smoke coming up out
Mm.
of nice blue green water.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of blink it off. And about 20 minutes later, here comes a boat. And right about the same spot I saw that smoke, boom, motors catch on fire. And there's my smoke out of the water.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But the name of the boat, Wild E. Coyote.
Mm. Wow.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
all right. I was very, very new to this consciousness that was waking up within me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pushing it as fast as
That's,
my nose could run with it.
oh, okay.
All
Mm-hmm.
right. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I was getting a sign from above, that said, you better slow down or you're going to be just like Wild E. Coyote and you're going to burn, crash, and burn.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's how you
So,
interpreted it. Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's how I interpreted
Mm-hmm.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I did kind of put
You
my
slowed
heel
down. Mm-hmm.
low down.
Mm-hmm.
And, but yeah,
Then how do you think that did it change anything? Did it help you to kind of process some of the stuff that you've been learning in that time you slowed down? So then later you came back stronger, or how?
Well, no, because at that time I did not have anybody around me being in the military. And I was in the medical field. And I thought, well, if I start discussing this
Mm-hmm.
peer group in the medical field, they're going to lock my butt up.
Mm-hmm. So what did you like in the parapsychology? What was some of the stuff that you learned from there, from the
Oh,
classes or from
well,
anything that you studied?
no, it was more of the experiences that uh, psychic people have had. I know that one group that Dr. Shrout from the International College of Hypnosis Studies said, well, he said, if ever you get a chance to study the Fillmores,
The
and
Fillmores.
the Fillmores are the people that founded in Blue Springs, Missouri, the Unity of Christianity movement.
Mm.
Okay. And there was a Science of Mind church in Homestead who wasn't Unity of Christianity, but I had read a little bit about Ernest Holmes, and Ernest started a group in the late 20s, about the time of the stock market crash back then. And he said that our concept of God is all upside down.
Mm.
We think he's at the top of the pyramid and we're at the bottom of the pyramid. We're actually turn that pyramid upside down,
Mm.
and that concept of God is so large that it's now
Yeah.
the base of the
Mm-hmm.
pyramid and it's coming down pinpoint to each individual. All
Right.
right.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
All right. And
Mm.
so whenever I walked into that congregation, like on a Sunday they made, I would actually start feeling energy transfer from me to the person to my right and to my left.
Mm. Wow.
Okay. And well, I could relate it to the first time in high school that I got French kissed.
Mm.
All right. My whole mouth
Mm.
became tingling.
Mm.
All right. And so
Mm.
uh, that the hands were not vibrating, but you put
Pulsed.
the
Mm-hmm.
pulse in the hair could
Mm-hmm.
pop up on your fingers and your forearms, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that there was some connection going. And one of the
Mm.
fun things that I learned from a woman there, she says, "Do you ever skywatch?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." She says, "Well, find a small cloud and see how long it takes you to, when you're staring at it, for it to disappear."
Mm.
And so that's like to say that
Did
you
you
are,
try that? You tried it
yeah,
and what did?
you are focusing your personal energy into that cloud.
Uh-huh.
And so it really has to say that distance is not an obstacle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people like yourself that are trained in Reiki,
Mm-hmm.
you can do the Reiki remotely. Hmm?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. And Anne Marie
Mm-hmm.
Morales Ear,
Yes.
okay, you
Mm-hmm.
know, she started a group 2 years ago, and a lot of us had associations with people that were in the SSP, whether we were or not. But Anne Marie would just, it was a non-recorded chat room, and once a week we would meet, and she did it on Zoom. And so she related to me that she thought that at some point in my time, probably around the time that we got stories from Rumi. Are you are you familiar with Rumi?
Mm-mm.
RUMI.
Oh, okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that I was an energy healer
Mm-hmm.
uh, in that Afghanistan, Pakistan area of the world at that time. Okay,
Oh,
that
okay.
I really was not in Israel when Jesus Christ was doing his walk, and but I love to read the stories of Rumi,
Mm-hmm.
and I found out through Ivan that I had been married to a Turkish woman twice.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so my first
Yeah.
overseas assignment was in Turkey.
Oh,
Ah,
wow.
and I can tell you, as a young man, right out of tech school, going there, you know what nervous diarrhea is? Well,
Yes.
I had a good case of that about 3 or 4 days before I knew I had to go to JFK International Airport and fly off to Turkey. I do not know why,
Why? Mm-hmm.
but
Hmm.
you know, it probably was the greatest 18 months of my young life, uh, learning how to scuba dive and going to a tropo site. It was a microwave site up in the mountains near Erhach and Malacha at Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
Snow was on the ground. Got to go snow skiing up
Wow.
there with a couple
Did,
of guys. You know,
did you write any of the language? You know how they have the artwork and stuff with their language, you know, how I kind of write the symbols and stuff, it kind of looks the same.
no, but I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
Merhaba Nasser get you there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and oh, so one of the things from Turkey may have done bilocation telekinesis. I don't know. We're putting down a 10-year-old sentry dog, and my job as a veterinary technician got stuck holding the vein off on the forearm or foreleg of this dog. But they had given him barbiturates to make him very, very groggy. All right. But when he was fully conscious and awake, he was one mean SOB.
Oh.
None of the other handlers, his second handler, usually they have a handler every 4 years. And so he'd been handled for over 8 years
Mm.
total. And when that handler left to go rotate, nobody could handle this dog.
Mm-hmm.
I had to put this drugs into his food and wait for him to calm down so they could put a snare around his head and
Wow.
into the cage right with him.
Mm.
So
That's pretty sad, huh?
it
That's kind of
was,
sad.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
you know, as part of the job, you got over the
Connecting to the animal or yeah.
connecting
Mm-hmm.
to the animal. Yeah, I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
first time I saw a female dog being spayed in the clinic, which was kind of a benevolent thing to do. All right, uh, I probably almost passed out,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but
Mm-hmm.
you start then to
Disassociate that, huh? You kind of
dissociate it. Yeah,
disassociate. Mm-hmm.
so I pretty well dissociated from what was going on,
Mm-hmm.
and the kennel probably was only like 2.5 to 2.5 feet wide, cyclone fencing, concrete floor. So, like I said, my job was to hold the dog down, to take my thumb and block off the vein. The doctor gave the injection of the euthanasia agent, and he walks out. All right. And so I have one knee kind of across the lower neck of the dog near its shoulders, and I'm tapping on the dog's eyelid because I know from surgery, if you give an anesthesia to a dog, you don't want them to lose the ocular reflex, but you want them to lose the what they call the pedal. The pedal reflex is where you pinch between the the nails on the pad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leg,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll pull back. Well, they're not deep enough. They feel pain. But when you lose the blink, then they've gone too deep and you might lose the animal.
Mm.
And so I was waiting for this dog to lose the blink. And it took a while. When I finally figured it had, and I was starting to cramp. My legs were getting tired.
Yeah,
I've been
tired.
in there
Yeah.
about 40 minutes.
Wow, wow.
And so as I'm getting up, this dog starts, its head starts coming up and its jaws open.
Oh no.
And I immediately spread eagle kick both sides of the kennel. And I am out of the kennel, standing behind the other security policemen that were watching what was transpiring just moments before in the kennel with the dog.
Mm-hmm.
How I didn't knock him over. That beats the tar out of
Yeah.
me. You know,
Wow.
I
Mm-hmm.
should have knocked somebody over going out through that door and getting
Right.
what I got, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
there were witnesses, but they wouldn't say anything
Mm.
except on the going away cake at the veterinary service, they put down a saying, and it was "Goulet Goulet Deli Dave," and
What's that mean?
that meant bye bye Crazy Dave.
Oh.
All right, so
Mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
knew something happened that
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't you couldn't
Mm-hmm.
really explain.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Like a magician almost in
yeah,
something, you know?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I've had experiences where I thought, well, maybe I almost got taken out. Uh,
Mm.
I drove a I drove that Honda
Yeah.
750 Super Sport from Paris, Texas to San Francisco. But the third day, I left Albuquerque, New Mexico for Norton Air Force Base area just above Los Angeles. And I had to drive through Phoenix. And going across the Davidson Canyon Bridge, I get hit
Oh.
what seems to be like a gust of wind.
Oh, okay.
And the motorcycle does this and then that.
Oh.
And
Mm-hmm.
I could feel the midline pull in my body. I mean, it burned.
Mm.
And I knew that it was not muscle memory. I've never made a move like that to correct my
Mm-hmm.
balance,
Mm-hmm.
especially with a 400-pound motorcycle
Mm-hmm.
beneath me, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So, um, was I assaulted and protected at the same time? Possibly. And recently I've had problems with my Nissan Titan pickup truck. It's a diesel.
Yeah.
And I was coming back from having a spa session at True Rest where you lay prone in Epsom salts for about an hour and just experience neutral buoyancy and you meditate, you know. And so I'm coming home, just crossed the bridge and got to take a right hand turn and just start into the turn and the motor quits. It's an automatic. I mean, what is
Mm-hmm.
going on in my mind? But I am manually pulling the steering wheel to get through the turn so I do not plow into the car that is in the other lane wanting to go on the road I just came off of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I get through the turn and it's still coasting and I'm saying, well, I got traffic behind me. I need to get off to the shoulder. But let's try this. I put it up in neutral and I hit the button to start the motor again. motor fires up. I put it back in gear, and
Uh,
off
yeah,
I go.
that's so strange, huh? Because
Yep,
it shouldn't have went off in the first place, but then it shouldn't
yep,
have restarted so like that either, huh? Like
that's right. I mean,
unexplained.
but
Mm-hmm.
nothing electrical was failing in the truck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that gave me, the what the is going on type,
Yeah.
you know.
So what do
And
you think that is? I mean, what it is it is it targeting and then your
well,
angelic aspect saves you or something like that,
I,
or
I don't, I, I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like I was targeted, but I was
mm-hmm.
put into a circumstance where if I froze up, I would have crashed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And another time previous to that, when I was driving tractor trailer truck for a company, uh, I did for about 16 years delivering livestock confinement equipment. I'm in West Virginia on US 33 coming back to Harrisonburg, Virginia, down the Shenandoah Mountain, and the truck is empty. It's a step deck, but halfway down the mountain, the power steering goes out.
Wow.
And I had to keep the speed up between 25 and 30 miles an hour so I could pull it through the switchbacks. And usually, when you got the power steering, you'd rather be 15 and 20 miles an hour through the switchbacks, especially if you're loaded. Get all the way down the last probably 2 miles of that mountain and pull it off to the side of the road and just let it sit there and the motor run. And I got no cell phone signal. I can't call in, tell them I got truck problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sit there about a half hour and feel the wheel, and I got power steering again.
Wow.
So I drive it into Harrisonburg and I find me a big commercial truck repair center. And by that time, I got cell phone coverage to my company I worked for and said, I'm going no further unless you totally replace this power steering unit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the mechanic thought, well, you had your valves in that power steering unit. They got overheated and they just froze up.
Mm.
And when they cooled down, they started working again.
Oh, so it could heat up again and or freeze up again or
And
whatever,
yeah, they would do
Yeah.
it again, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So um, I've been really, really lucky. And okay,
Mm-hmm.
one other day during that trucking experience, I'm coming off I 64 onto US 220. I got one more delivery to go near Trout, Troutman, and it's close to Roanoke, Virginia.
Okay.
And go through Iron City, and I get the feeling that, well, if I stop for something to eat, like breakfast, and it's Saturday, that place is going to be closed by the time I get there. And that means I'm going to spend another day on the road because if I deliver by like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I still can get back to uh, Mount Pleasant, North Carolina by dark.
Mm-hmm.
So I forego stopping at this fuel stop, and about 2 miles down the road, I see a wide load coming at me, and we are crossing a 2-lane bridge.
Mm.
This tractor is an old gray Peterbilt, uh, long nose, coffin sleeper, flatbed. He's got no flags, no
Mm.
four ways going,
Oh, wow.
no warning that he is supposed to have.
Yeah.
And we both hit the bridge at the same time.
Fuck. Mm.
And I moved my truck over, almost rubbing the concrete guardrail on the bridge. And I'm throwing gravel up in the air behind me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Behind the trailer. And I found this out from the man from Tennessee that was in a white pickup
Behind you.
truck behind me.
Did you bust
He
his
said,
windshield or something?
he said, I do not know how you missed not getting hit by his load,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Mm-hmm.
did. But my problem is when I got off the bridge and he had gone by, I looked up and there was a man walking toward the end of the guardrail on my side of the road.
How's
Now,
that?
now I could not take a left-hand turn to get back into my lane because the steer tire, though it points to the left, the back end of it is going to rub that guardrail.
Mm-hmm.
And those guardrails got big rivets on it and seams, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to blow the tire.
Right.
I'm starting to hit my air horn. I'm starting to hit my city horn. I'm trying, wake up, fella, get out of the road, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the very last moment, I mean, I'm off the fuel. I'm just letting it roll, but I'm still doing about 30 miles an hour. And at the last moment, I'm getting no response. And I give the
Wow.
wheel a hard left. And the tire does hit the end cap on the guardrail and blows.
Mm.
All right, so momentum just carries me forward straight, like I hadn't even tried a left-hand turn. Still in the gravel. There's a creek bed on my right and brush between me and the creek bed. Come to a stop about 100 yards from that end of the guardrail, and I lock the truck down. It's not going to go anywhere anyhow with that tire
That's
blown.
tired. Mm-hmm.
But I said, well, I got to go back and look. And I get out. Cars have stopped, and there is a woman at the guardrail, and she's bent over looking down in the ravine, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see dread on her face. So I'm kind of halfway relieved,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I get next to her and I look down there, and there's this man curled up in a briar patch. Well, the guy from Tennessee had pulled off behind me and come back, and he said, "He looks all right." I said, "Yeah, let's go pick him up."
Mm-hmm.
We walk down there, and we get each of us get an arm, and he said, "Let me alone." Uh, Are you hurt? Let me alone.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "No, we're not going to let you alone.
Yeah.
Get you out of this briar patch. I'm going to take you to
Mm-hmm.
the side of the road."
Yeah.
And he was so drunk, you
Yep.
could smell the
Mm-hmm.
bourbon whiskey and
Mm-hmm.
almost put a label on what type of whiskey he was
Yeah.
drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning when this
Mm-hmm.
happened. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And he was hitchhiking on his way home about another 20 miles from where we were, up near the Hot Springs, Virginia area. And he wouldn't let the ambulance crew check him out.
Oh.
But one of a woman driver in a red pickup truck was coming at me when this was going on. And she stopped and she said, I just feared that you was going to run into me head on. And she said, but the craziest thing, I said, what? She said, I saw that man between your truck and the guardrail.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no way. You know, I mean, he could have been there. I mean, when we're standing tall, we're pretty thin, maybe 6 inches from the shin to the back of our calves. But when the tire blew, possibly all that air pressure going up is what helped to eject him over the guardrail and down into the
Oh.
patch.
Wow.
But I was really relieved because
Mm.
even in, my
It
Vietnam
could have
service,
been smashed,
yeah,
huh?
yeah, my Vietnam service, I was a medic. I'd go on med caps. I would carry a personal sidearm, but I never had to shoot it or take a life
Mm-hmm.
in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I was really worried that that day I might possibly had
Mm-hmm.
taken a life.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but
Maybe because he was so drunk that helped him probably, Sometimes that does, I hear, if they're
And
so
so,
drunk.
by the time the state police got there, he was gone. All my witnesses were gone.
Wow.
And uh, so,
So you had nothing then. You had to just write a report
well,
and
I wrote down names of the people that, you know,
mm-hmm.
told me what they saw, but it was more or less my word against
Mm-hmm.
this
Yes.
driver that they could not find. They found two other drivers on that road with wide loads that did not have a permit or markings.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled them off the side of the road past where my truck was sitting, waiting for a tow truck to pick it up. And I said, "Did that truck look like these?" And I said, "No, sir. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this was a dark truck, totally different make. It was like a Peterbilt." And so, yeah, uh,
Mm.
we get we get all sorts of crazy challenges. But
Yeah, you've had a lot there. That's
one
quite
thing,
a bit.
yeah, one thing that happened to me at Grafton during the 2022 Journey to Truth, my first time going there, and Ivan was also doing readings there that year.
Mm, cool.
Yeah, so I brought with me two Chinese-made Segways, and why I brought the second one was so if James had some time to recreate, he could run around on that other one. But he didn't. He was very busy. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we were roommates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
That's why you know him so well, huh?
yeah. Well, just so
Mm-hmm.
happened that when I met him, December, uh, his girlfriend Asha knew me, and she called me up and said, "Have you got any X39?" And I said, "Yeah." And so um, she this is LifeWave patches, right? And she said, "Can you bring them over to James's house?" I said, "Where does
Oh,
he
because
live?"
he lives there close to
Yeah,
you.
he
Uh-huh.
lives 12 miles from me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so anyhow, I go over there and I bring the patches and I get to talk with Usha. And so I already knew about the conference in Grafton. I said, "James, are you going to that conference?" "No." And so at the end of January, he finds out that he's going to go. He's going to
Mm,
be a speaker. And I've already bought my tickets, paid for my hotel
room.
room in the lodge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, at the last moment, he tells um,
Tyler,
Tyler and uh,
Aaron.
Aaron that, yeah, I can make it. And so, anyhow, I end up sharing my room with him, driving him from Charlotte all the way to Grafton and home again.
Yeah.
But I'm out one day on a Segway and I'm coming up from the lake area, cutting across the lawn in front of the lodge on the right hand side, and I get hit with a stone wall of force,
Mm.
and the Segway can't go no further up, and the stick is hitting me in my gut, and off I go, and I use my left hand from my judo training in college to break my fall.
Mm-hmm.
So I have two scar patterns. I don't know if I got enough light to see them, but one patch here and one patch there. It literally tore the skin from the back of my left hand almost completely off. They
What
were
did
like,
you do? You fell? Or what happened?
I fell off of the two-wheeled Segway.
What is that? The Segway. What is
It's a
the
battery operated device that you ride around on. If it was to bounce up and down, just think of a pogo stick with wheels.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but it's got a T bar on the top,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when you push forward on the bar, it
It
increases the
goes.
speed.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Neutralize it, stop, pull back, it goes backwards. And it has a centrifugal force stabilizer built in the computer to
Mm.
keep it from tipping over. It's kind of like what they use in big aircraft. Um,
Mm.
I'm just blank for the term of it right now, but gyroscope. It's like
Mm.
a built-in gyroscope. Okay,
Mm.
and so I end up pulling it up top of the hill, um, and getting out a first aid kit in the back of my truck, tearing off the tag ends, putting some neosporin on it. I had some gauze, but I didn't have any bandage tape. So people were seeing me wearing duct tape over this gauze
Mm-hmm.
at the conference. Uh,
Nobody had anything, or you couldn't go anywhere to go
no,
get
I
some?
mean that's basically all I needed was to keep it clean
Mm-hmm.
and to keep that. I changed the bandage. I had it plain gauze, but uh, just the gauze, and I had a lot of duct tape.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's how I kept it clean. But I had a reading from Ivan, and I said, "Hey," I told him about that. He says, "Well, all I can say is there are some that did not want to see you here."
Oh, okay. Mm.
Okay. Um,
What'd you take of that?
well, what what I take of that is that oftentimes we we have a mission, and there are those that are for it, and those that are opposed it, and those that
Mm-hmm.
are neutral about it.
Mm-hmm.
And um, that Ivan kind of thought that I had been a hybrid in my ET experiences in other dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
and at some point in time, probably uh, within the Draco Empire,
Mm.
as probably a slave, but still had learned their ways, came into their trust, and uh, whether I was adopted by royalty, um, I don't know. And but
Mm.
I left it, and
Okay.
you
Mm-hmm.
know,
So they don't like that.
and so
Mm-hmm.
um, let's look at the presidential election that we had, and the behavior of those at that State of the Union address.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's always opposition
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
whatever stance that you have in
Mm-hmm.
the world,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and
And you're just going there to your presence was gonna be everybody's probably has their own mission and stuff like that going there, in their way of bringing their energy. So,
right,
hmm.
right, yep. And I mean, I do not think it was anybody that had attended the conference.
No, it's energetic. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
energetic. Yeah.
yep,
Hmm.
yep,
Yeah,
um,
definitely. So,
yep.
yeah.
The year after, I went back, and that was a good conference. And I think I showed you that orb that I
On your
recorded.
porch.
Yeah,
On your
and
porch. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
and so that happened about a month after I
Oh,
returned.
okay. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
if you look at that video, and you can see that it was more of
Yeah, it was like a
a
squiggle
light,
thing or something.
yeah, a
Hmm.
light ship.
Hmm.
Okay, and it was translucent.
Mm-hmm.
There was something going on within it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I told you about the Zavians and how their form
Mm-hmm.
was
Kind of
almost
translucent.
transparent,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but kind of looked like a misty, out of focus apparition,
Mm-hmm.
not solid like our flesh as a
Mm-hmm.
human.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um,
Yeah.
and I was told by one person that considers himself very, very psychic and attuned that, oh, your uh, your higher self was on board that orb, just came to visit. And
Hmm.
so the story about that orb was up at midnight that night and felt that, well, I need to check my security cameras that my neighbor put
Mm-hmm.
around the house. And I
Right.
hadn't done it in 3 months. So I turned on the laptop where I had this one that we're talking through uh, and got the security cameras up. And when I got to the back porch one, I said, wow. And so I took the HDMI cord and plugged it into the big screen TV and took my cell phone out and started shooting videos of it
Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
screen TV. But if I'd go outside and look through the window, my
Then you
eyeballs are
don't see
seeing
it.
nothing.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
But the infrared of the camera was actually picking it up, and that
Mm-hmm.
camera is fixed mounted on the wall, and it has no search and follow uh, ability with the lens that it uses. So it just detects what it detects. It's in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I
Mm-hmm.
even called the IT tech over the next day and I said, hey, Leo, what's this?
Mm-hmm. And
Is
he's like, I don't know.
something faulty in the camera? He says,
Yeah.
no, camera's working fine.
Yeah. Like, is it a cobweb? Like you just
Yeah,
kind of debunked every bit of it. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So we have a few people. We have Isaac and Joe. We're getting bubbles in the chat here. So if y'all have any questions for David, then we can answer them too. But you want me to do your cards? Pull
Oh,
some cards
sure.
for you? Okay. I pulled them. I shuffled them and pulled some while we're talking too, so I can go through them. So
Mm-hmm.
that for sure resonates. You have protection.
Yes.
And then hyena dog man.
Uh-huh.
So we kind of connected that with Sirius or something like that. What do you think about having an aspect on Sirius?
Ah, Sirius is
Uh,
Sirius the asteroid off
no,
of
the star, this blue
oh the
star,
star. Okay,
Sirius. It's a Sirius
okay.
A, B, and C, but A is like the
Mm,
dog and cats and stuff, and then B is usually like the mammalian, dolphin, stuff like that. It could be either or too. There could be a
right,
lot
right.
more.
But I
Mm-hmm.
know I do have an affinity for the canine.
Mm-hmm.
We have neighbors that when they go on vacation or they going to be out of the house for a day and they got two Pyrenees, a male and female. These are about 130-pound dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go over there, they are
They
just
love you.
all
Mm-hmm.
over me,
Oh yeah, I see that.
loving on me,
Mm-hmm.
and even their
Mm-hmm.
cats are too.
Mm-hmm. I see
So,
that. Yep. Yep. All the animals.
yeah.
Yep. There's the mantis,
Mhm.
praying
And
mantis.
as a kid, I learned that the mantis that we have, the micro mantis in our insect population here,
Mm-hmm.
they make cocoons
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
they're
From the
attached on
summer.
the inside of shrubbery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so while I was driving truck up in near Winchester, Virginia, I stopped for something to eat and had to park in their parking lot. And I saw these cocoons and I said, praying mantis. And
Mm-hmm.
I snatched a couple of twigs because one of the guys at work had a farm. And I told him, I says, and he had young boys that were just in their teens. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, put these in jars with air to get into the jar. But when they hatch, set them out in the garden area because
Mm-hmm.
they
They'll
are
eat insects.
insects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I got these as
Hmm.
blue beans.
Yep. And
Oh,
I
what
see
about being a record keeper?
very, very
Record
possible.
keeper.
I mean,
Right.
a lot of my work in the military and the veterinary service was as a NCYC doing management and keeping records,
Mm-hmm.
also doing inspections, and that involved writing reports and records.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And then that's blinking. Tall gray zetas. That when it blinks and that means like a yes, like on the pendulum, it says
mhm,
blinking for yes.
okay.
So some interaction with the tall gray zetas. It seems to be more, of a I feel like they're not positive or negative, but like a neutral thing too. And then there's some higher ranking zetas that are different than zeta gray. So there's a whole bunch of gray ETs. So
Well,
these
it's
here seem like the higher
it,
dimensional,
it,
you
it
know?
almost seems like that the tall grays are used for a resource, um, to teach and instruct skills, um,
Mm-hmm. See
to
that.
acquire knowledge from about a specialty.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's kind of like, I don't know
They're
if
like
if,
scholars or master teachers, you
yeah,
know?
if you've ever noticed a church organist,
Mm-hmm.
times they're not members of the church,
Oh,
but,
okay. I didn't know.
but they're musicians, huh?
Mm.
That know how to play the organs,
Mm-hmm.
and they might be professional outside of Monday through Saturday, uh, working in an orchestra or working piano at a bar or a nightclub, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But
Yeah. Kind
they're
of
they're
alien
just
like.
they're skilled
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
people.
So it might
Yeah,
be an alien in the human body,
yeah.
like that.
And they're
Mm-hmm.
just for hire. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's like the fire symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what does this say? In your childhood?
Childhood, you were taken by multiple UFOs. There was there was a time I asked Ivan about. I'm probably 4 years old, and we just moved into a house my dad built in Fairfield, Connecticut. So we moved out of the big city into a suburb, and it was only like I would walk to school when I got to be 5, so
Well,
that that was maybe a mile from the house, and there was creeks around and a pond around the house. And I find myself sitting on the floor in the living room playing with a wind up train I may have gotten for Christmas and wondering, where are my parents? Where are my brother and sister? But the thought came to my mind that my mom always said, bad news travels faster than good news. And the phone wasn't ringing, so everything was okay.
mm-hmm.
And Ivan said, yeah, your parents had a hard time explaining to your brother and your sister why you were found home alone.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, when they came to the house, Bruce and Carol, my brother and sister, saw me there,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't ride home with them from wherever they were in the car.
Yeah.
So he kind of thinks that, yeah, I was taken,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
deposited. Yeah.
Yeah, and your parents couldn't explain it. They couldn't understand it. Why either? So that's the only way they could explain it in that way. And probably what they say to your brother and sister.
Ivan never told me. He said
Oh,
they. He just said they had a hard time trying to
mm-hmm.
explain.
Mm-hmm.
to my
Yeah.
siblings. Yeah.
They probably just made something up like somebody dropped you off, like that. Oh, here's the MIB agent. So that could be interdimensional. That could be
Mhm.
something with you falling,
Mhm.
because you're going to go and talk and stuff and find out more information,
Right.
at the conference and stuff. So that seems kind
Yeah.
of maybe.
And Ivan saw me also as a admiral within a galactic merchant marine fleet.
Oh, okay.
So,
Hmm.
um, and I had experience in Turkey with the American merchant marines because I
Hmm.
had to go on board their ships and inspect the refrigeration charts.
Hmm.
And one time they had a very modern ship come into the port of Iskenderun, which is the eastern end of the Mediterranean, right next to Syria. Um, and it was pretty shallow water, and there was a storm coming up. So we were all on board the ship, and the captain of the ship decided that he was going to go pull anchor and go out to deeper water because he did not want his ship to get tossed and go aground.
Hmm.
So I really remember that because when we came back to shore the next day, um, in the Tuslog Army Logistics Command headquarters building, getting a cup of coffee and looking at the mountains out the window, and those mountains were going up and down, because I was still retaining the almost vertigo
Hmm.
in my inner ear,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I, from the wave action of
Hmm.
sleeping on that boat overnight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That would. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So here's some, these kind of seem like, it seems like beings like, moving around, kind of
Yeah,
shadows too, in a way, you
it's a
know,
multi-dimensional aspect of,
something, huh? Could
yeah,
be how something moves through time. Connect with your star family.
you know,
Military Black Project Super Soldier within the SSP. Is that the Black Projects? Is that going to be the Marine Merchant Fleet? And that's also the
it could be
thingy. Mm-hmm.
moving supplies
Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
universe to universe, and
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. And it could also be taken aside and maybe one of your altars does something else too, that you don't even know about.
right,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's 100%.
yeah, yeah.
Star
Stagnant have long been gone. Yep. I did get a message.
stagnant times have long been gone. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I did get a message from my dad, maybe 20 years after his passing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting in a living room uh, and reading Wired magazine, looking at all the fancy gadgets that the high
Mm-hmm.
tech industry is coming out with, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, to my sight, the centerfold pages of this magazine go white.
Oh. Hmm.
And I see four ones appear on the left page, and I see four ones appear on the right page. And so now my grounded self is saying, well, what am I supposed to do with that? And make the centerfold a decimal is the thought. So I make the centerfold a decimal. So I got 1,111.1111. Okay, what should I do with that expression? And then the thought comes, try squaring it.
Mm.
So I go ahead and square it, and it comes out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.8. And I go, myself, bingo, is this my dad? It's his math. Because when I was in Vietnam, my dad was on his way to inventing an avionic reactive crop system. And he had a new value for Libet Newton's pi. His pi was 3.15655656. And in Nam, I was reading a book by Jacques Vallée who spoke about parsec values. And a parsec has to do with the kind of like the speed in which light travels in a galactic unit, let's call it. So I gave that 3.5 parsec value to my dad in correspondence, and he liked repeating decimals. So he plugged in 3.5555555. So all he had was an 8-digit pocket calculator too. Mm-hmm. So he couldn't go further, that way. And when he multiplied his pi times the parsec and then multiplied that times 11, he got 123.45678. So the 1100.1111 squared gave a larger macro description of the previous. And I'd always thought that, well, whoever was communicating with him, because I knew that he was very intuitive. He could go to bed with a problem and wake up with the answer. And that 123 dot, well, Mercury, Venus, Earth, dot for Earth and Moon, maybe. Mars, asteroid, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. If that was a linear map, then this second expression is also a linear map that my father invented. Excuse me a moment, he invented what's called the Saturn bobber, and he did that while I was in Vietnam. And I took some of them to Australia with me, but in the Sydney area, they didn't do freshwater fishing. They did saltwater. So this was too small for their saltwater fishing. But you see two spheres.
Your camera went, so you need to put your camera down. Because I just see this bunch of your head. Yeah. Yes, it's good.
Okay, so you see two spheres.
Yeah.
You see a ring on each sphere. And then in the valley between the rings are little clothespin type plastic apertures. So when you see this way, you see a hole on each side. Well, he had holes all around it. This is my brother's 3D printing of the bobber. And you bring your hook through a hole so that your line can wrap around the inner part, and then you have your shot and your bait. So if you're sitting in a John boat, which is a very flat boat, you can't throw out 20 feet of line from the bobbers that they make in the States and expect your bait to get into the water that way. But this way, everything is wrapped around the rings of the bobber, and he thought it looked a lot like the planet Saturn. So he called this the Saturn bobber. And this is like 1971 that this came out. And it was an example of his ability to study buoyancy. And he wrote a book with his math and philosophy, and he got into languages and the characters for different languages that we started as a civilization and keep getting reset with new languages and things like that. So he was very much intellect for a young person that was raised basically in Brooklyn, New York. Mother was a single parent school teacher,
Mm-hmm.
raising three children, and he he was a pretty authoritarian type of fella. Uh, I caught my mother trying to blackmail me one time, and I was a teenager, maybe a junior in high school, and I called her out on it. I'm not going to do it. You're blackmailing me. And I get a tap on the shoulder and turn around and pop about give me a busted lip.
Mm-hmm.
You do not sass your mother.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but
I'll keep going with the card so you can. Wolf spirit guides.
well, the picture that I have right above me is a folder from the Sierra Club, and you have a female wolf with a cub
Oh, wow.
in that picture. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Alien groups.
Well, it's possible. I've given blood before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, consciously, have given blood before. So, cryogenic chamber.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one of your aspects, and then is in that in a stasis or chronogenic, or how do you think with that, with the
Well,
chronogenic?
you're, the term cryo,
The freezing.
yeah, it involves freezing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we we know and we've heard stories of young children should have drowned and in very
Mm-hmm.
cold water
Yeah.
and then
Mm-hmm.
have been resuscitated.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It freezes their whole body, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slows down the cellular metabolism
Mm-hmm.
and keeps it from deteriorating, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The star ancestors.
Mm-hmm. Funny story about a mound,
Okay.
uh, Etowah, the Etowah Mounds, Carterville, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
When I first got into driving big trucks, again, was for Seven Hills Transport out of Cartersville. And they have a Indian mound in the town that is the Etowah,
Mm-hmm.
alongside of the Etowah River. When you go there, they have a guard watching every visitor.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot pick up a blade of grass,
Mm-hmm.
a feather, uh, a
Nothing. Mm-hmm.
nothing,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I think I picked up a feather, and on the way out, you got to go through one of these bar type
Mm-hmm. Oh,
circular
okay. Mm-hmm.
exits, and it was locked. And the female ranger working there said, "Give me that feather."
Mm.
I
Wow.
said, "Really?" I said, "It fell out of the sky. It wasn't part of this mount. Give me the feather." So I got really pissed at her. I said, "You want to strip search me too?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
highly protected land and
they were very
everything. Mm-hmm.
superstitious.
Mm-hmm.
Very, they
Yeah.
people around Cartersville, that genre of being superstitious really
Mm-hmm.
were. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
yep.
Does that feel Arcturian to you?
Well,
Syrian,
I
Arcturian?
often think my dad was Octarian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking he might have been a walk-in a few times, like had a walk-in, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you said he grew up with a single mom, and so it seems like that would. I was thinking that when I was. when you were telling me that. You're a seer.
precognition.
It's blinking, going on
Mm-hmm.
a mothership in astral.
Okay.
That's a yes when it blinks. Mediumship.
Well, let's see. Aaron Lynn told me in the 1800s, sometime in Bulgaria, I was a female medium,
Hmm.
and I got hooked on heroin, and I died of a heroin overdose. That,
Okay.
you know,
Wow.
it almost has the reptilian in it there. Yes, I often do that.
Psychic abilities. Oh, this is a looping of the, the
That's
wolf.
that's that's the wolf. Yeah.
DNA. This is going to be contact with your star ancestors.
Yep.
Oh, you got a whale totem. Or just look that up and see what you could use for their trade with them with their
That
spirit
sounds
guide.
like that whale totem could be a Jonah story.
Oh, okay. That's another mediumship card. Wow, I didn't know I had two of them in here. So ask your animal totem to journey with you. Hmm.
That
Or
might
you
be
can.
that might be why uh, our cat, actually, it's my wife's cat, Lacey.
Mm-hmm,
When I first married her about 7 years ago, coming on 8 May, um, she had a Siamese, and Lacey is a saddlebred type cat, long
mm-hmm,
haired outdoor cat, half feral. And I could approach him. He'd be laying on the bed, and I could rub his belly, only on the bed, but he would not come to my lap.
mm-hmm,
Later on, after Squeaky, the Siamese, passed, Lacey would come up on my lap and I could rub his belly. But within the last year and a half, he'll let me feed him. He'll let me let him outside and inside the house.
mm-hmm,
But to have anything really to do with me, no. You
mm-hmm,
know, it's avoidance, avoidance,
mm-hmm.
avoidance.
Yeah, yeah. They're strange how that is, huh, with the cats, how
Hmm.
that could be. Underwater city. That feels, yeah. Do you feel that one? Underwater city?
Well, I've often wondered about the underwater pyramid off of Jacksonville, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And there are several other places in the Caribbean that you see uh, steps and columns
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
that.
Beamy. Is it the
Yeah.
Beamy? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Isn't that Atlantis? The
Well, they
Atlantis?
they think that was part of Atlantis.
Mm-hmm.
They think Atlantis was pretty extensive in size, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, that
The dolphins too, I see. Remote viewing. You know who Ingo Swan is.
I do.
Did you did you practice remote viewing already? Have you taken classes with that?
I've I've read from two or three different authors
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
viewing,
Yeah.
but I can say that I consciously
Mm-hmm. Do
can't
it.
do it.
You can. I mean, you could see stuff, ahead of time, and then,
But
you know,
I think that's precognition is
mm-hmm,
what we're talking about there, and that's in the psychic ability there as the
mm-hmm,
empath, and uh, uh,
maybe some of your
The,
other
the, the
aspects,
smoke
you
on the
know?
smoke on the water was clairvoyance.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and clairvoyance was the orbs on the produce boxes that I found out that
Mm-hmm.
they were rotten.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, to go into some place, when I dream, it could be a fantasy dream.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this could be your other aspects as well, you know, that would be in the super soldier or, you know, in the programs and
Ah,
stuff too, you
and
know?
well, there was a dream I had. Um, my wife is very much a follower in the Christian religion, and she had me go to a men's retreat for a walk to Emmaus.
Mm-hmm.
And the first morning, uh, I woke up before they got into any of their program. I had this very lucid dream, and I saw a split screen TV in my mind. And on the left screen was a triple decker UFO. And on the right screen was a twin engine ME 262 fighter jet that the Nazis built in World War II. Somewhere before this whole thing occurred, I got reading a book or a story on Facebook, maybe, or a AOL chat room. You know, back when we had those crazy little modems that would
Mm-hmm.
forever to get the signal through.
Dial up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dial up. uh, it was about a group of survivors from a big ET spaceship crash in France, in that area of Europe,
Mm.
that was during that World War II era. And later on, these people, like myself, all right, had found a host for their soul. And they were holding a reunion here in North Carolina, up in Little Switzerland. And I had just gotten into my second marriage 10 years after the divorce of the first marriage. And I said to myself, if I go up there, this woman that is now my wife, she is totally going to freak out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, uh, but it's the possibility of, did I know? Was it that ME 262 that took out this big passenger liner type looking UFO craft? And, you know, like I was witnessing everything, but they were static.
Mm-hmm.
The UFO wasn't moving, the jet fighter wasn't moving,
Mm.
just that they seemed to be over the same open meadow,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm.
And by golly, I wasn't going to share that with anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
At
Mm-hmm.
retreat.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
they wouldn't have even, there
yeah.
would have been just silence, you know?
He's really crazier than I thought he was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just some light language. Does that feel kind of like a Syrian or maybe Pleiadian?
I don't know. It looks like two type animal creatures on the bottom.
Syrian. Okay. Uh-huh. Like an armadillo or something.
Could be an armadillo on the right, couldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something
Yeah.
like that.
Okay. And then here's scientist on alien craft.
Yeah.
A ruby. Do you have a ruby?
I do not.
Time traveler.
Mhm.
Yep. Oh, ghost whisper. and that's blinking. Are you receiving the message? Hybridization.
Yep.
That's what you talked about. Hybrid.
Yep.
Last card. That's some seems like there's little zetas or insectoid zetas, like a
Mm-hmm.
hybrid species there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those were good cards for you. Those were pretty spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. Well, so then what are you gonna do with the book and stuff? Because we have just a few more minutes left of the thing, and so we're just talking
Well,
about where or
I,
how, when are you gonna do?
I joined a group and spelled out SKOOL
Okay.
school, and it's a school for writers, and they promote certain types of AI writing tools that will take your
Mm-hmm.
text and form a story from it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really hesitant about doing that.
Okay.
Uh, so I'm
Okay, I understand.
I,
Like you feel
I
like it's not your own or something
yeah,
if you do that.
I
Mm-hmm.
take my cell phone and I go into notes.
Mm-hmm.
I type out a chapter and then save it and lock it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll go ahead and I'll post it.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that
I understand why you think, because it really completely transforms the way the story is written. I mean it all puts stuff in there like that too, and completely looks like a professional writer,
yes,
and like, dang, this is a good story, and something that I could never write like that, with you have to be a pretty skilled writer, so then it will put new things in the story as well after I reread it and I said, I didn't say that, this is putting
yeah,
new stuff in there that I didn't even that didn't happen, so this they're making up stuff in the thing, and that's not true, so you kind of have to watch that as well.
okay. Does anybody maybe have read uh, Ben Calford's post on Facebook, the 31st of December, 2024?
I don't know, what is it?
I'll go ahead and read it.
I don't know what it is.
Okay. Well,
Mm-hmm.
here it comes, short and
Okay.
sweet. Go ahead, dark Sekath Draco Lord. Swallow my soul, devour me. I am eternal. I am the light. You consume me, you consume the light. I will take you over from the inside if you think you're going to feed on my soul. Think again. First, I will inhabit you from within. I become you. Then you become me. Just how do you think some soulless Draco wind up developing souls? They're feeding on our soul energy, getting high off of it. But those of us who are ascended beyond the fourth density, those of us who are resonating with Source, cannot be devoured. Instead, we infect them with our light, consciousness, and they begin developing somewhat of a human or angelic soul resonance. First, they are able to experience our memories and look down on our timeline by feeding on our soul energy. Then they are able to experience our emotions. But before long, as our essence is of the source, we begin to take over them and inhabit them. Then suddenly we are completely and almost artificially incarnated into them. This is how they develop a soul, by stealing the soul of others.
Mm.
Only they're not really stealing it, it's more like it's stealing them. it's completely working against them and their agent and their agenda, but they're addicted to it because of the deep emotional and spiritual sensations that they are not able to feel or experience without our soul essence and the euphoric high that it brings. And for this reason, we also have light workers incarnating into these cycles and bloodlines. But this is how it began. From them feeding on our soul energy, we were able to infect them, possess them, and then become them. And this is also how we have repurged some of the Draco DNA and reactivated some of the ancient dragon lineage that they have switched off in their genome by the great AI demerge and signed by Ben Talford.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that tells the super soldier experiencers that even though you have alters, you were creatures of light
Mm-hmm.
before you got split,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Just to be
we are
light,
gonna,
you know?
we are going to
Mm-hmm.
come out on
Mm-hmm.
top.
Mm-hmm.
We will at some point in time be the dominant force within changing first our galaxy and then be at par with others in other universes.
Mm-hmm. Just like, I mean, that's what we kind of already in our other realities, other aspects of us live everywhere, you know, wherever you can think, and much more that we don't even know of,
Yeah,
experiencing life. And it's not clones of us, either other aspects that are in these places, as a praying mantis, as a Syrian, however, you know, so.
right, right.
Mm-hmm. So
There's
it's,
there is a soul within that form,
mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
and in my belief, there is only one prime creator. And yes, there are many gods, many archons is another term. I equate an archon with, well, this personality became the governor of this region of this galaxy. And they're trying to exert influence on the other regional governors. So
Mm-hmm.
we have many gods
Mm-hmm.
competing for
Mm-hmm.
the
For
soul
position. Mm-hmm.
of, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
all that
I
they do.
think that'll always be, don't you? Does
Oh,
that'll always be, you know? Mm-hmm.
yes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That 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 kind of goes back to the title, no beginning and no ending, just now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So where can people find you then, on Facebook and on your email, or do you want anyone to contact you for any questions about your story
Oh,
or your book or anything like that?
I'm in Facebook. Um, you see the character standing up with a horse and a dog, Pyrenees dog. Um, I got to get off. I used to have a big interest in photography and flying drones as well. Um, like like when I started in high school to learn how to fly a Cessna 150,
Mm-hmm.
it, my parents weren't going to pay for it, so I had to use my part-time gas station wages, and I soon found out it was a very expensive hobby to have. So
Yeah.
even even into flying uh, drones since probably 2017 or 2016. Um, it's it's gotten very expensive, and now I'm keeping my monies for more real
Mm-hmm.
things and
Yeah.
trying to participate. I want to go to the Disclosure Now
Mm-hmm.
this summer, July,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
St. Pete Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've asked Brian's son if I could be a volunteer, and he said yes. And if I find one other person that will use me as a reference when they buy their ticket, I'll get uh, half price for admission. But
Mm-hmm.
it's uh, it's a fun meeting of a lot of different people with a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different gifts.
Yeah, I'll be there too. So good to meet you.
Good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people too that are going. I think it'll start growing as the years go, you know? So,
Good. Yeah, right.
mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, I'm going to end the live stream and thank you again for uh telling me all of the experiences and everything too. That was, it's um so many things and it's all like it does seem like you're kind of non-physical in some ways too, like an angelic form or something that you just kind of go in and out too a lot of times, like when you're doing them all these times and then it's like you it fixes it or something, or the time changes, time stops here and then it corrects or something like that, something, a lot of unexplained things, but miracles, however you want to say, you know. hmm
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
But I think it's all your your higher up, higher self, other angelic. You said, and Archangel Chamel. That like that. I always see that too. Like maybe he has like a whole army, however, watching out for you too.
Uh,
hmm
I think I've shared this with you before, but since you are the mother of an autistic child, my sister-in-law being the mother of a severely Down syndrome child, when she was painting the kitchen cabinets maybe 20 some years ago, her son was probably 15. The Down syndrome child was 15. And he was watching her. She slipped and started to fall to the floor, and he caught her.
mm
Okay.
hmm hmm
So
hmm
just because the form
hmm
looks crippled
Yeah.
and handicapped,
hmm
it's nothing to do with the soul
Right.
that
hmm
incorporates that form.
Right. That's true. Yeah, definitely so. Yeah, that's a good message too. Thank you for telling me that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know my son is it the autism and stuff like that kind of messes with his behavior, with aggression and stuff like that too. But most of the time if you could take that aggression away, then he'd just be a sweet kid, like that.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yeah.
hmm yeah. So
All right. Well, good night to you,
yeah. Good night. I'm gonna end this stream
everybody else.
here. Yeah, thank you all for joining us. And we had Jacob and Isaac and Joe in the chat here, and then everyone who's watching from YouTube or